Today we're going to be learning how to solve and graph one-step inequalities. So first let's go over some of the rules for graphing. There are two different types of circles we can use when we're graphing inequalities. The first is an open circle, and you can draw a picture there. An open circle is used for less than and greater than signs. A closed circle, where it's colored in, is used for less than or equal to and greater than or equal to. So let's go ahead and try that on a couple. Number one says graph the following inequalities on the number line. I have x is less than 3. Because there's no extra line there, remember open circle and closed circle, and if you need to make yourself another note here, an open circle is what we're going to use because we don't have that extra line right there. So now I'm going to find 3 on my number line, make an open circle. Oops. An open circle. There we go. And then the way that we need to figure out which way to draw our arrow is that we're going to ask ourselves if we want the numbers that are bigger than 3 or smaller than 3. Because this is a less than, I'm going to go ahead and draw my arrow going to the left. Now let's look at number 2. Move this out of the way. Number 2 says x is greater than negative 1. Again, greater than is going to have an open circle, so I'm going to find negative 1 on my number line. And then this time, since I want the ones that are greater than, I'm going to go to the right. Now in number 3, I have a greater than or equal to. And because I've got that or equal to, that extra line, I have to spend more time making my circle. So now when I find 7 on my graph, I'm going to color it in. And then again, greater than is going to go to the right. And then here, number 4, I have x is less than or equal to negative 5. So I'm going to find negative 5 on my number line, color it in. And then I need to go smaller, because this is less than or equal to. Now number 5 and 6 are a little bit different. It's almost going backwards. So for both of these, as soon as I know that I need to write an inequality, I'm going to draw my variable. I usually like to use x. And then I need to figure out the number. In this case, for number 5, I have my circle at negative 2. So that's the number that I'm going to use. And now to figure out the sign, I'm going to look at which direction it's going. Well, it's going to the left, which means I'm getting the numbers that are smaller than negative 2. So I'm going to use a less than. And because my circle is open, I'm not going to draw that or equal to here. Now on number 6, I do have a closed circle here at number 4. So now I am going to use the or equal to, that little line at the bottom, and I want the numbers that are bigger to 4, so I'm going to use greater than or equal to. Now when we're trying to figure out if it is a solution, we need to graph it. So go ahead and write in graph on your notes. And if the arrow covers the number, then it's going to be a solution. Now we already graphed x is less than 3. We had an open circle at 3, and the arrow was going to the left. So now when it says to circle all that are solutions to x is less than 3, I'm going to go through and figure out if my arrow covers it or not. Well, 5 would be right here. My arrow does not cover it, so that is not a solution. Negative 3, however, is over here. My arrow goes over that number, so negative 3 is a solution. Now 3 is a little bit tricky. I do have my circle there, but it's an open circle. So I want you guys to make yourself a little note. No, it is open. When we have an open circle, that solution is not a correct solution. 15 is going to be way over here, not a solution. -8, however, is 0, is 2, yep, and -12 is going to be way over here. So those are all solutions. If the arrow covers it, then that means that it is a solution to the inequality. So now let's go over rules for solving. When we solve for inequalities, it's very similar to how we solve for equations. The only thing that we have to be careful of is this little star here. You must flip the inequality symbol when you multiply or divide by a negative number. So as I'm solving these, I'm going to solve them exactly as if they were equations, and then I'm just going to be really careful when I put that final sign at the bottom. So looking at number 7, whenever I solve an equation, I always start out by drawing those railroad tracks. And now I want to get that variable alone. So I'm going to circle x, that's what I want to keep, which means I need to get rid of that -2. So I'm going to do something with the 2. Remember, we use inverse or opposite operations. So I'm going to subtract 2 because I was adding, and I need to do that to both sides. Now my solution here, well, I just have x all by itself now, and then I had -4, and then I subtracted 2. Remember, -4 minus 2 is the same thing as -4 plus a -2. And a negative plus a negative is a negative, and I just add those numbers normally. So 4 plus 2 is 6. So I know it's got something to do with -6. Now to figure out my sign, I look at what it was before. It was a less than, and I have to go back to that really, really special star here. I only flip the equality when I multiply or divide by a negative number. Now I did subtract 2, but it wasn't multiplying or dividing, so I'm going to keep my less than. Let's take a look at number 8. On number 8, I want to draw my railroads, figure out what I want to keep. I want to keep that variable, and now I'm trying to get rid of the extra numbers. Well, I only have one number to get rid of here. I'm subtracting that 5, so I'm going to do the opposite and add 5 to both sides. And when I figure out my solution here, I had x minus 5, then I added 5 to get rid of it, so now I just have x. I had 4 plus 5 over here, which gives me 9. And then I'm looking, did I multiply or divide by a negative number? Well, I just added 5, so I'm going to keep the exact same sign. These are like baby equations because there's only one number to get rid of. So now I'm going to draw my railroads for number 9. On number 9, I have -2x is less than or equal to -6. Well, I know I want to keep that x. And that -2 is squished up next to it. So if I'm squished up next to the variable, that means I'm multiplying by that number. So I need to divide to do the opposite. I'm going to divide by the number I want to get rid of, which is that -2, and I need to do it on both sides. Now I'm going to have x, and then I had -6 over -2. And if I look at Mad Bob, I have a negative and a negative. So that means that I have left over a positive. And that's going to be 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I know it's going to be a positive 3 here. Now I need to go back to that really special rule here. I only flip the sign if I multiply or divide by a negative number. Now here I have to be careful because I did divide. So I divided by a -2, so I need to flip this. So make yourself a very clear note on your notes page. Because we divided by -2. So instead of less than or equal to, I'm going to use greater than or equal to. Let's look at number 10. On number 10, I'm going to draw my railroads and circle that x that I want to keep. Now here I have a slash, which we know that means to divide. So to undo dividing, I'm going to multiply by that number I want to get rid of, both sides. So I'm going to get just x on the left, and then -1 times 3. Using Mad Bob, a negative times a positive. leaves me a negative. So I'm going to have a negative answer, and then 1 times 3 is 3. Now I got to go back, that really special rule. I flip the inequality symbol when you multiply or divide by a negative number. I did multiply, but I multiplied by a positive 3. So I do not need to flip it. So I'm still going to use less than, and make yourself a note. No flip here, because it was a positive 3. Here in number 9, we did flip because it was a negative 2. So really, inequalities are even easier than equations because there's only the one step. The only time we have to be careful is when we are writing out that inequality symbol. Remember, we have to flip it when we multiply or divide by a negative number, and we'll get plenty of time to practice that.